I'm gonna kill myself. Why you do this? Why? Damn it! Alright, we're gonna fix you today. Isn't that just great? Nice new floor pans. Covered in what I believe is brake fluid. Just don't want to believe that's brake fluid. Yeah, it's definitely brake fluid. Sick! Got a puddle of brake fluid on my floor. That's great. Let's see if this thing even starts. Probably not. It has been sitting for almost a month. Wow. Seems fine. Okay. I don't know if you guys can tell, there's like no fluid in this filter. It's like as dry as it can get. And there's like a little bit at the bottom and it's just barely doing its job. To like pull it down like this, just so it'll do stuff. But I think that fuel pump's about shot. Now it wants to be all snappy. Still alive. Look at it. It's been sitting here for so long. You can tell I haven't moved it because the top of the rim is nice and clean and the bottom is just covered in dirt. Because it rained, and when sitting in the rain next to dry dirt, it's just kind of like that dry, dusty dirt. Just speckles all over the wheel. It sucks. So, I think I got to fix. Wow. It's actually quite snappy for being cold. It usually isn't. That's weird. So the cam fuel pump, I believe, went out in this truck. I don't know why. I mean, it's only like 3 years old. The thing didn't last very long at all. I mean, the fuel pump that was in it was over 10 years old, but I mean, that one eventually went bad, and we put the new one in. I don't know if it's just because it's made in China, store-bought from O'Reilly's or Napa or whatever, that's just not a good product or what there, but I think you would get more than 3 years out of a fuel pump. That's kind of weird. But regardless, we are going to change the fuel pump out today. I would have, the reason the truck's been broken, if you even want to call it that, it still runs obviously, for so long, was I could have easily just put another can-driven fuel pump in it, but I want a more consistent fuel pressure, because if you listen very closely to a lot of my videos when I drive my truck, the truck likes to stutter at a low RPM, and what I mean by that is probably below 2 grand. If you kind of like you kind of have to feather the throttle a little bit to get it to go right, otherwise it'll kind of choke up if you like slap it pretty hard. It just doesn't like to go. I just don't think it's getting enough fuel pressure at a low end that it should be. The reason I think that is because it's a cam-driven fuel pump, so the slower the motor is turning at a lower RPM, the slower the cam pump is actually pumping fuel. It's building less pressure at a lower RPM, and if you pull my truck up to 3 grand and you slam it, it's always going to be there. That's because it's spinning faster, the cam's pumping the fuel pump more often, so it's a more common thing there. So it's actually going to be pumping a lot more fuel, making more fuel pressure at a higher RPM. So I want to be able to have that constant high fuel pressure always, so I think it's time to actually go to an electronic fuel pump. And I was actually lucky enough, I sent a post on my Instagram asking people in San Diego if they had a fuel pump, and my good friend Liam led me to another good friend, Tyson, that I met, and he was nice enough to shell out his Holley Blue Label fuel pump off of his 70 Mach 1 to go on my truck. So I'll show you that fuel pump in a bit, and hopefully we'll get on the truck pretty soon. But that's pretty much the goal for today, is get a new fuel pump in it, and I can imagine the truck will actually, like, the motor will be a lot more snappy, it'll have a lot better throttle response, and it should run a lot better, to be quite honest. And I do have a regulator and a gauge, so I can see exactly what I'm running it at, so I'm not gonna over pump this thing, because the Blue Labels, I think, run at about 14 PSI, which is way too much. That's gonna go right past the needle and seat, so I wanna make sure it's not too much. But yeah, we'll go ahead and check this thing out. I'm letting the truck warm up because I want to see if the cam pump will start leaking or not. I don't know why, it's weird. Like 3 weeks ago when I started it, I went to go drive the thing, it just started pouring fuel everywhere, which is really, really weird. That normally I've never had that happen. And then all of a sudden I started up 2 weeks later and it's fine. So it hasn't leaked since then, but I know for a fact when the motor gets super hot and the engine bay is super hot and it's hot outside, it'll leak. If it leaked once, it's gonna leak again. It's one of those things. So I'm gonna change it out now. I got an engine block off plate for all that stuff. So we'll go from the back to the front and we'll wire that thing in, and hopefully it'll be a pretty good time. So we'll get right into it. Before we really get started with this video, I actually got a package in the mail from my buddy Seth at Patrol 360. I'll leave his Instagram up, you guys can go check him out, but he actually decided to send me this. It was nice enough. So if you guys want to send me something, I'll put my P.O. Box information up. I check it every single week. Every single package I get, I look at, I read, and I keep. I always keep everything, and I really, really appreciate all the support from you guys sending me stuff in the past. So if you want to send something, or a letter, or a sticker, or anything you want, I do want to do these mail time things, but just no one has really sent me anything to do it. So it's the only reason. If you're wondering why I haven't done any in the past, it's just because I don't really get anything. It's just sitting there. I check it every week, and sometimes it's been empty, so I just don't do any. But Seth was nice enough to send this out, so I'm gonna go ahead and crack it open and see what we got inside of this. Oh, that's so sick. Whoa. That is probably the coolest thing ever. That's awesome. I don't know, you know, that looks a lot like the one that's on it, but I like how it's got the edges. I might actually use this for a little while. We'll try this one out. Thanks, Seth. Dude, I really appreciate it. That's sick. Look at that. So what Seth and I were talking about is he actually has a product that can pretty much patina anything. So as you can see on the back edges, it's got a little bit of patina to it, which is really, really cool. So I think this is awesome. It actually goes perfectly well with the theme of my truck, obviously. And I think this is really sick. It'll actually probably look really cool in the front of my truck. So I'll probably end up changing this in a little bit, because electronic fuel pump means I can go, you know, a little more race car style. So we might have to change off the truck one to a racing one, because, you know, I got a racing pump in it now. Alright, so the first thing we're gonna have to do is put my bike away so I can get some room. I have a really messy garage. I'm just gonna do a clean and, like, yeah. So we got this is just a general idea of what we got going on. Just some hose clamps to reroute the hoses to this. You guys can see that this is the Holley. What I mean by blue labels, it's got the blue on it. I believe this is a 110 gallon an hour, pushes about 14 psi. I think they run at about $150 range or so. As you can see, this one's used, but it should work good for what we're going for. So big shout out to Tyson for hooking me up with this, and I'm gonna get this thing cleaned up so it doesn't look like total junk. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I have this piece of angle iron because I have a good feeling that this is too tall to fit inside of the frame rails. So what I'm probably gonna end up doing is actually bolting this to the frame rails and then hanging this off of the side or something like that, something along those lines. And then I got a block off plate that will go ahead and cover where the old fuel pump went. So that's kind of what that's for. It's got a gasket behind it. You really can't see it, but some simple stuff. This should be pretty simple. The only thing is I just got to go get a switch so I can wire these things up so I can use it. I'm going to wire it off a separate switch. So a lot of people like to use it off the key, which you can do. But since I work on my truck so much, I want to have it separate and on its own deal. So if there's ever an issue or anything, I can turn the thing off. So that's the way we're going to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and save no time. I'm going to go ahead and get this bracket mocked up, pull the old pump out, and get this thing installed. I think I might be able to get it on the outside of that. Or... Ah, the fuel is all down my arm. No. My tank is out of gas. And it's all going down my arm. the last little bit. So we got, this is our main tank line. It goes up out of the top of the tank, makes a 180 degree and goes straight through the floor, and this is where it comes out at. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy off, put a bolt in it, hose clamp. Now I can leave it like that for a little while we work with actually mounting stuff. And oh my goodness, I got to feel it all up and down my arm. So now I can work with this guy as well as this. So there's a chance I might mount it on the outside of the frame instead of the inside, so I don't have to deal with it getting close to wires. So you can see I have multiple holes around here that I can use. So I might just temporarily use one and then mock up another one and then go ahead and drill it. The only downside is I don't want these two near each other, obviously. That's the only concern to me. That's the only reason I want to put it inside of the frame. But yeah, I don't want those two getting very close to each other. I'll have to figure that one out. All right guys, next day, this is kind of what I got going on. So you can see it's a little bit different than what I was previously doing. I was gonna go inside the frame, but I decided to go outside to keep it away from the exhaust. As you can tell, it is kind of still a little bit close, so I'll probably end up using this hole, or I'll use these bottom holes and make some sort of heat shield for it. But for right now, these actually don't get quite that hot. The exhaust doesn't get as hot as you might think. This one doesn't, at least. So it shouldn't be a problem having it like this. I mean, the fuel line used to run inside of the frame and down. And so what I did to keep the pump away and keep it kind of cooler was put it on the outside. This is our tank line that goes straight to it, and then from the pump it just goes through an existing hole and then kind of just down the frame. So this will work right for right now, and it's not necessarily like set and done, but this is pretty much what's gonna get the truck moving for right now. I might go back later and change it, but now I need to run the wires. So I'm gonna run a chassis ground right here, run the positive up to a switch, and then I'll run a switch to a fuse and fuse to the battery. Okay, so you can see I've got just that one little butt splice. I'm probably gonna cover that up. And then I have this nylon kind of cover going all the way up the frame. You can kind of see I have it going all the way up and then into the cab. And one thing I want to mention before I actually continue is I have not drilled a single hole. Every single hole I've used so far was already in the frame. The two holes that I mounted it with, the ones I pulled the fuel line through, the wires through, everything, those are all factory holes that I've used to do all this. So you don't have to really drill any holes to have to do this. So that's kind of another one of the things I'm kind of focusing on, is trying to make this as easy on myself as I can. And then you'll probably also notice I used a 10 gauge wire. The fuel pump I think has 16 gauge, and then I went up to a 10 gauge, which you can kind of see right there. And the reason I did that was because I'm trying to limit the amount of voltage loss I get from the switch to here. So I'm using a larger wire, and then I did a little bit of research on what people are running with this setup, and a lot of people use a 10 gauge wire, so that's just what I chose to go with. You can run really whatever you want, but that's just what I wanted to do to kind of keep current flowing a little bit better, instead of putting a ton of current through a 16 gauge wire, which was already there. So that's kind of why it stepped down right here, because it's just what was on the pump, and then I ran that all the way up to the top. So and then coming into the engine bay side of things, you can't really tell, but way down in here, I routed it up. I pretty much followed this harness that kind of goes down into the frame. I followed it up, and then this will sit most likely kind of tucked in here. I'll kind of make it kind of sit down there pretty nice and flush, and then it just kind of, I use this hole instead of this one because this is the really difficult grommet to work with. It's a pain to take in and out. I mean, it's almost impossible to put wires in. You can see this was for the halos. This wiring isn't done either. You can see I went below it because I just could not get it to go through. But I am using this spot right now. I'll probably make it go pretty high up like that, just so you can't really see it. I don't want to be able to see anything like that. That would piss me off. So I want to have it up high to where you won't really be able to see it. And then I'll run a switch in the cab, run the positive lead to the battery, and run a fusible link. So now I'll have 3 things off the battery, which is not okay with me. A lot of people like to do that, but I'm not a big fan of it. So I actually have a big relay box that I'm going to make in a future video. I've seen a lot of people do it, so I decided to do it myself. I'm learning all this electrical stuff, so sorry if I'm doing it wrong, but I'm going to teach myself how to do a relay box and run things off of relays, so it'll be a lot safer. So look forward to that in the future. And then I'm sure you guys are going to wonder, this is the kind of nylon cover that I'm using. It's not that expensive, and it actually makes your engine bay look a lot better. So if you have a ton of wires just kind of laying around, or if you want to redo your harness without using just electrical tape, definitely invest in this stuff. They have it on Summit. You can get it all sorts of places, but this is an Insultherm 1/4 inch, 50 foot kind of Tech Flex, what it's called. You can kind of see it right there. It's a Tech Flex, and then it's just a spool of it. And this is a giant spool, but I had this lying around, so I thought I'd use it. It fits one 10 gauge wire through that. So 1/4 inch fits one 10 gauge wire if you want to kind of gauge yourself off of that. But yeah, so I'm gonna go inside and make a bracket for the switch and show you guys what I'm doing. So I need to mount a switch, and as you probably might have noticed if you picked up recently, is my switch for the halos is actually hanging out of where my radio is, and that's not safe. It can ground out on stuff, so I want to actually mount these things properly, and I'm just making a cheap little piece of angle iron bracket just to have something to mount them. So what I'm doing is I'm actually going to put this kind of right under where the ignition switch is, off to the left of the steering column underneath the dash, and an angle iron is a super cheap, easy way to mount them. A lot of people use this. This isn't a permanent thing. This is, like I said, this whole thing's pretty much temporary, just kind of get me going until I can kind of like do bit by bit, make it a little bit nicer as I go. But I went ahead and I measured 5 inches on a piece of angle iron. I think this is just 1 by 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I can drill a couple holes. There's factory holes that I found underneath the dash that we'll bolt this to. And then I can drill a couple holes and I can make a little switch panel out of this thing. So it'll be super easy. I'm going to go ahead and take a hacksaw because it's really easy to cut it with a hacksaw, and then just take that, mock it up, mark some holes, and get drilling some holes and make this bracket real quick. Alright, so I drilled my holes, went ahead and marked it and drilled it. So the hole I used, or I'm attempting to use, is this guy right over here. I'm only going to be mounting it on one hole. I could drill another, but like I said, the whole temporary thing. So I'm going to go ahead and actually mount this thing up. This was supposed to be a 3/8 hole. I drilled it 1/2 inch because I accidentally drilled this one. But I believe this is just a 5-inch tab across, and then I just measured from the center over, and I think it was 1.5 inches over or so, 1.25 inches, one of the two, between these two holes. And then I just went to the center of this and made that measurement over and drilled my hole. Now this should bolt right up and it should be centered. Alright, so our switch panel is pretty much mocked up. Check this out. So this is pretty cool. So you can see I did that nylon stuff over it, so I can literally just do that, and then it kind of covers everything. This will pretty much just sit right in kind of like that, and it'll be pretty simple. Alright, so the last thing we need to do is take this cam driven pump off and reroute the lines back to our regulator. And I'm going to block it off with one of these block fuel pump block off plates. They're pretty cheap. You get them at any auto parts store, and you just go ahead and unbolt them and put these on. They come with a gasket. It's pretty self-explanatory. So we're going to go ahead and change this out, reroute the lines, and we should be able to pop a fuse in this thing and it should work. Okay, so I finally finished. As you can see, I don't know if the camera angle is bad or not, but I went ahead and I put that block off plate in. It took me literally 12 minutes to swap all that out. It looks a lot better. Everything's wired up, should work. I know it's ugly, but like I said, temporary. I'm gonna fix it later. So if all in my head is correct, this thing should turn on when I flip this switch. Ooh, that is a good sign. Running at 5.5. Solid on this end. Oh, no, I got a small leak, damn it. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to check. I have a tiny leak. You can see it drip. Damn. Okay, so I think everything is close enough to fire up, so I'm going to try it out. Still have a tiny drip. I gotta look into that. Running at just about 5 pounds. Make sure no oil leak down there. That's still flowing. This still looks good. Awesome. Alright, update. I'm just taking it around, and everything seems good. It runs good. My throttle response is there, everything seems there. Alright guys, so it's the next morning. It's pretty early in the morning. I got up early. Before I went to school, I got up a little bit earlier to show you guys. I was going to take you guys on a drive with the truck around the block today in the morning so you guys can actually see everything, and everything still works. However, the only downside is when I was driving it, after I ended that clip, I went up the street and did a full pull, and then when I stopped, I noticed my oil pressure was lower than normal, and so I instantly brought it back and shut the truck off. And I was very, very concerned and confused. And as you can tell, there's a rag under it with a little bit of oil on that. If I move that, there's an even bigger oil drip. And if you look, you can see by the front main it's leaking, and then up by the fuel pump it's leaking as well. So what I think happened is that block off plate I put in, I didn't actually use like a sealant. I probably should have. I didn't think I needed to on that, but I think I'm gonna have to go back and reseal it because I thought it was a low pressure area. Apparently it's a little bit more high pressure. So I'm gonna have to reseal that, seal that. So what happened is it leaked, and it caused my oil pressure to go down because there was a significant leak in the system. So I'm gonna have to go back and fix that before I can actually drive it, because I don't want, one, I don't want oil leaking everywhere, and two, I don't want my oil pressure being lower than normal at all. That's a really, really bad thing. So I'm gonna fix that. I'm really, really sorry I couldn't actually get a driving clip, a proper driving clip in this video, but all I can say is the truck ripped. The 1 or 2 pulls that I did in the truck, it rips. So I'm super stoked that everything worked properly up until I noticed my oil pressure was low, but everything did work. But I'm sure this video is really long, so I'm going to keep this short. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I haven't been getting as much videos out as I'd like to, just because I'm super busy with school. I had tests yesterday and I have tests next week, so I just got to keep going, you know. So I'm really, really sorry. I'm trying to keep up with this, but I'm going to do my best as always. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. The next video with this, I will fix that and we will go driving. So you'll expect a driving video hopefully soon. Thanks for watching, guys.